This is MAC 1140, question 17 on the final exam. And the question gives us these two functions. F of x is equal to x squared plus 1, and g of x is equal to the square root of x minus 3, which I've written here. And it asks us to find f composed with g and the domain of f composed with g. So the definition of this is red. That's f open circle g. That's a function of x, and that's defined to be f of g of x. So whenever you see like f circle g, this is what it means, f of g of x. So, and this notation is very, it's telling because like it appears as if they've plugged g of x into f of x. Well, that's exactly what we do. So write f of x, but instead of writing an x, just write an open set of parentheses. So so f of blank equals blank squared plus 1. This is the process. You just look at your f, and you don't write the x. So leave this thing blank, and then in the function, wherever you see an x, just write an open set of parentheses. So here we had an x squared. Here we have an open set of parentheses squared. Okay, and then what you do is you go in and you fill in the parentheses with whatever g was. Here, g is the square root of x minus 3. So we'll put, well, here on the left-hand side, I'll just put g of x, because that's what it is. But on the right-hand side, we'll fill in the right-hand side of the equal sign for g of x, which is square root of x minus 3. Okay? So now, just work with this. Your left-hand side stays the same, f of g of x equals, here we have the square root squared, so those two things cancel each other out. So that all we have now is x minus 3 plus 1. In other words, well, negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2, so x minus 2. All right, and now the domain. So when you have the domain of a composition, you need to consider the domain of the final product, which is this thing. So like in isolation, this thing has no domain restrictions. So no restrictions on domain for this thing. But if there were, say if there were a fraction or a radical here, then obviously you would have your normal restrictions. But here, x minus 2, you can plug anything in for x, and it'll be fine. You can just subtract 2 from it. But the thing to remember with compositions is that the inside function, the function that you're plugging into the other one, you also have to consider that domain. So here our inside function is g. We have to consider the domain of g. So what was the domain here? We see that g is a radical. G is a square root function, actually. So, and it's a square root, so you can write the 2 there. And whenever the root is an even root, the inside of it must be positive. So what does that mean? Well, the inside is x minus 3. So x minus 3, the inside must be positive. X minus 3 must be greater than or equal to 0. Solve this for x. In other words, the domain must be x greater than or equal to 3. So the two things we need to know, again, the domain of your final function, our final being f of g of x, no domain restrictions here, and the domain of g of x, which is x greater than or equal to 3. That's the restriction. So in other words, we're taking these two conditions. I mean, this condition gives us nothing, but we still have to consider it, this no restrictions thing. But that combined with x greater than or equal to 3, well, that just means x has to be greater than or equal to 3. And that's the domain of f of g of x. And so in interval notation, yeah, the answers are given in interval notation, so you have to convert this inequality to an interval. All right, so think about this. Here's a number line. Here's 3. Greater than means on this side, so I'll shade in that off to infinity. And this line, greater than or equal to, that means we can put a closed circle on the 3. We include the 3. So to go from the number line to interval notation, to indicate that we include the 3, we put a bracket and then we write our interval. Our interval is 3 to infinity. So you always put a parenthesis with infinity, and since we're including the endpoint of 3, we put a bracket there, and this is our interval from 3 to infinity. That's our domain. So that corresponds to choice E on your paper.